glad you're all here, and what's really beautiful about this is that there are many intersections amongst the five of us. Ademola and Dindga, did you work at the printmaking workshop? Yeah, Ademola, Dindga worked at the workshop years ago, and Dionis is like a continuation of what we were working in. Stephanie is one of the members of Black Women in Print, so that's a sort of a tangential relationship there. I was a member for a while of Where We Are Black Women Artists, and did you work at the Carnival at any point? And Ademola also worked at the Carnival. So there's all these intersecting relationships spanning over probably 45 years. So I'm going to start with Ademola. What we want to investigate today is creative collectives. Now, certainly, most collectives are formed because there is a real need to make something happen that is no longer happening. It fills a vacuum. So can you tell us, as one of the founders and members of Weusi Artists, what the landscape, what, you want this? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What the landscape of the larger art world was when Weusi was formed?
At the time when I entered Harlem, because I really grew up in the Lincoln Square area or Lincoln Center area, I watched Lincoln Center being built as a child growing up. So that was quite an experience. So one of our members, at that time he was called Theo, was his name, but he was Abdullah Aziz, came to be known later as really a great artist and a mentor for many of us in terms of printmaking, because he studied with Amen, a great artist who taught him printmaking. So he brought that uptown with him when we formed the Weusi. The vacuum was, Robin, we were shut out for the most part of a lot of the avenues that make for a successful career in the visual arts, because of, we don't have to go into all of the conditions that many of us are aware of in terms of racism and, money, all of those things we had to deal with from a disadvantaged perspective, because we were people of color, quite simply. So the Weusi, these began as mainly just black males coming together for the purpose of, there were really several purposes, but the main purposes were, one, the idea that we needed to form a group that can address some of the problems that we would be having as individuals trying to break into and be successful in the art world. And the second one, main thing, was creating a kind of new perspective on what beauty was. What is the interpretation of beauty? And they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, it's for sure. Well, the children weren't looking at us as beautiful at that point. So we had the task as visual scientists, which I prefer to call us, to transform, alter the way people looked at black people, people of African descent. And
So let me just interrupt for a second. Does that mean that the majority of the artists in Weusi were figurative artists depicting scenes and realities from African American life, or were there conceptual or non-figurative artists as well?
Very good question, Robin. The bulk of the artists, at least the way they express themselves, are figuratively. Specifically, purposefully. I mean, I love abstract and color and art for art's sake, all of those things that we enjoy. But we felt at that point in history, which was in the early 60s, that it was important as leaders, visual artists, as leaders, that we create images that would serve the purpose of our people's upliftment.
Now, when you say leaders, who are the leaders and who are they leading?
Well, artists are leaders. We're conduits for the greater purpose. We're reflective of society. Specifically, we're reflective within society of our particular group, in the case, African American and Caribbean artists. So as leaders, we felt it important that our output, since we were visually interpreters of our culture, that we show power and we dismantle some of the horrendous stereotypes that were perpetuated. So that was the origin, that was the void that we requested to fill.
Yeah.
The
Now,
Weusi.
when you were talking about one of the missions that Weusi had was to help the artists develop careers, what does that entail? I am constantly amazed when I hear young graduates of art school talk about how they're lost. They don't know how to build a career. They don't know that you have to formulate relationships with journalists and historians and curators and museums and gallerists and photographers and videographers and other artists. So when Weusi was started, what were the things that you identified as ways to help the artists develop careers?
The first thing we realized is that we can't sit around waiting for galleries to discover us or museums to discover us. So we formed, part of the cooperative mission was to form an institution, our own gallery. So we formed Nyumba ya Sanaa, which in Swahili means house of black art. So that was our main focus, is to create an institution, create a place where people can come and see the work. It also then kind of morphed into a place where people can gather. We had all kinds of wonderful people who were coming through those doors on 132nd Street between now Malcolm X and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard from all over the world. A lot of the people who were leaders, movers, and shakers within the whole cultural world at that point came through our gallery. Poetry, music, all of those things we had as programming, part of the programming. And we also was a place for artists to show, a place to show. We did the first, Faith Ringgold had her first show in Harlem at Nyumba ya Sanaa. Ben Jones had his first exhibition in Harlem at Nyumba. So the gallery began to fill a void, a place to show, and a place to learn, and a place to exchange.
When you say a place to learn, what were you learning?
We learned printmaking. Woodcutting was something that Abdullah brought from Irving Amen, was his mentor. And that was one thing. And then just being around other artists whose purpose was to share and to excel and to grow. So that was what Nyumba brought to all of us. It was truly a cooperative.
Was there, as far as I understand it, there were only two female artists that I know of, Kay Brown and Dindga McCannon. Were there any other women artists in Weusi at any point?
Not really.
Okay, was there a reason why it was primarily testosterone? I mean, that's a lot of very heavy energy. Was there any particular reason?
That it was male?
Yeah.
That's just the way it happened. We didn't.
Let me just say something.
Yeah.
The year that Weusi formerly became Weusi, before that, you had the art show on St. Nicholas Avenue. I think that was
7th Avenue. Before we
that was,
moved.
that's right, Adam
Yeah.
Clayton Powell, that's true. And I think I had just made my 18th birthday. There were women, men, everybody was there.
Don't you see? You've been telling people you were 16 all these years.
Well, maybe I lied by a year. But anyhow, somewhere between 16 and 18. And there was a huge group of women and men, but somehow by the time you got to the point where Weusi was founded, the women had disappeared, except for me. And one of the reasons I was still there was because Perry Cannon, who was also one of the founders, was my husband. And because I was there, and because also being so young, I had come under the arms of Weusi. They supported me, showed me, talk about education and learning techniques and learning how to be an artist. Y'all gave me my first one-woman show at the Truth Coffee Shop on 135th Street, right across from Smalls. But like I said, there was a lot of women, and then suddenly when the group became formal, they all disappeared.
Oh.
The women, you mean the women disappeared?
The women
Yeah.
artists
Yeah.
who I saw during that summer of the art show, the first art show on the fences.
In 1964.
Yeah.
Dindga's talking about one of the things we realized is that our people, people of color, black people specifically, were not used to going to museums and galleries. And the imagery that they were digesting and exposed to were not positive images of our people. And even in religion, for instance, Christ was blue-eyed, white man. Well, God is supposed to be made in your image, so there was a problem right there in terms of imagery. So that was part of the challenge we had. How do you create art that has all of the parameters that make good art, composition, color, subject, all of those things that within the context of also creating images that are going to uplift and make people think, make people look differently at what our culture was. For instance, we had to deal with Tarzan, a white man, king of the jungle. Or if you looked at television, Africans were portrayed as these savages, quote unquote, with bones to their noses and jumping up and down. I mean, that was what was perpetuated on the general public. So these are the images that we had to deal with and kind of break them down and reinterpret. And we were very successful, tremendously successful.
Ademola, what were the demographics of people that you really wanted to look at the work? Who were you addressing or focusing on interacting with the work of the Weusi artists?
Our first concern was, and this is a quote, black art for black people. That was part of our mantra. The most important thing was creating images now that could go on the walls of people's homes, in the churches, all of those kinds of things. But we all were always interested in the broader art world and making money and getting our work in museums and collections, so that was always a base as well. But we had a specific focus on these images, which were realistic images. But one of the challenges, and we can maybe talk about this later because I don't want to kind of just dominate everything here, but there's a myth that we didn't recognize what quote unquote abstract art. That is totally a myth. Many of us are great abstract artists. Aziz was one. Abdul Rahman was one. I mean, you know, so, but we felt at that point in history it was important because we wanted to create art that had a purpose, and that purpose was uplifting.
Were any what were one of or two of the really successful projects that Weusi generated that you feel was pivotal in some way?
We interacted with the theater community, which was a little different than usual at that point. We kind of connected to the National Black Theater, Dr. Barbara Ann Tier, who was pioneering at that point in the ritual form of theater. Of course, the New Lafayette Theater, we became kind of the resident partners. And that was very successful in the sense that we kind of remolded what the relationship between the visual artists, practicing visual artists, and people in theater. the theater community. And, you know, in terms of set design, in terms of the poster designs of the productions and all. So that was one of our most successful. And then, of course, the idea that we created prints. We had a very vigorous and rigorous print production, woodcuts. Mainly, it was woodcutting.
Were they hand printed or?
Oh,
did you-
yes,
yeah.
we didn't have a press.
Yes,
This
you
was
did. Before you got a press.
before we got a press, and before we kind of really met Bob and was able to then go into some of the other printmaking forms.
So did any of the artists start getting collectors through the activity of exhibiting and interacting with people at the space?
Yeah, yes. We built a whole culture of community collecting, which was significant because, as I said, we were not normally going into museums and galleries. So that's why we did that first outdoor art show. We actually took the paintings and hung them on the fence around the perimeter of the housing development that ran from 127th to 131st Street. That was our first outdoor exhibition. So we took the art to the people, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, people were just awed at seeing this work because they had never been exposed. All they had the prints and images they got was from Woolworths, what they call the 5 and dime store. For those, you know, I'm aging myself now, but
It's true, though.
that's where you got your images.
So-
You went to the
They were looking at the artwork, which I imagine often reflected the reality and the truth of who we are. So in a way validating, because art for many people that are not involved in art making or not around art often see it as something really magical. It sort of lifts up the reality that you're depicting to another level of dignity and integrity. So besides just getting people involved in art, what were you doing culturally for society?
Well, I mean, the fact is that instead of seeing black people with bones through their nose jumping up and down, you saw images of physicians, images of doctors, images of great kings, you know, so it made people do research and actually read because they hadn't been exposed to these kind of images. So that was part of our contribution to the movement.
Yeah, one other thing, we also remember this was a period where the thing about hair began, because Weusi and many other, I guess, the forward-thinking artists amongst us, we all wore our hair natural. We also began to dress in African garb, so that was another counterpoint to the narrative of the standard American
And to
stuff.
hold your point, natural means that you didn't put the straightening comb
in your
through
hair.
your hair so that it became straight, quote unquote. So please.
Yeah, and that was a battle, unfortunately, that's still being run today, this hair thing, because back then, as a young black woman, getting your hair pressed, that was just what was supposed to happen. And if you didn't get your hair pressed, you were ostracized, your family didn't like you, they didn't want to be seen in public with you in your nappy hair, and the whole concept of Africa and the positivity of Africa and the positivity of being black people, loving yourself just as you are, not as a mirror of another culture.
Right, not even a mirror, a poor attempt to mimic another culture that really doesn't suit you, doesn't suit your lineage, your heritage. And this is something that we still struggle with. This is a 400-year struggle with the psyche of all African Americans. It is a horrific part of the legacy of enslavement. Because if you cannot embrace your natural self, you cannot be true. You cannot have the dignity that you deserve. So we struggle with this, and I sense it's even worse now than it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because all I see is millions of brown skin, varied complexions of brown skin women with hair down to their waist, blonde hair, all kinds of
Or
bizarre.
purple, or green.
Purple. But I see that as a little different. I see that more as a creative kind of of an enterprise. But this is something that rocks the very foundation of our identity.
Well, you know, I have a good report. I have lived long enough to see a quantum leap in consciousness, okay? Even those people who still run the comb through their hair, put the lie to straighten it out, most of them have at least a inkling of a connection to Africa and a connection to blackness and indigenous culture, okay? So that has been a quantum leap from when we began our careers. Now, there's a lot of problems today within that whole matrix, but I have lived long enough to bear witness that we've made a quantum leap in consciousness, even though it may not have filtered down to, you know, our parents and the importance of, like you said, here, and some of those other things that we're experiencing.
So I think we'll move on to Dindga, who is one of the founders of Where We At Black Women Artists. What was the administrative structure of Where We At? Was there set roles, like a treasurer or a director, somebody to take notes at meetings, somebody to write proposals?
We started basically as a grassroots organization, but over time, because Where We At was unique in the fact that not only did we have artists in our group, we ended up having businesswomen, poets, novelists, dancers, musicians, and out of the women who were business people, Priscilla Taylor and especially, those were the women who gave us a really solid foundation. We had the whole treasurer, president, vice president, secretary, all of that. Priscilla was a very astute business person. She had a lot of connections in Brooklyn. Even though the group started across the street down the block, most of our members lived in Brooklyn.
When you say across the street, you mean
I
here in
mean,
the East
literally
Village?
right
Okay.
down the block. That's
Okay.
where the first meeting was, on 2nd Street,
Oh.
between B and A. I had
Okay.
a 5th floor walk up with the water dripping in the hallway, no lights, the bathtub in the kitchen, and all of that stuff. That was our first meeting. But over time, our nucleus was in Brooklyn. Priscilla, she was, like I said, a very astute business person. She was responsible, along with getting us, making sure we had the board of directors and all of that, so that we got our 501c3, I think, in 1980. So we had our administrative stuff together. As a sisterhood, we also functioned on another level as supporters of one another. Because, you know, now that I think about it, one of the reasons why those women probably disappeared out of Ademola back in the day was because being an artist was not a woman's avocation. We were not encouraged to be artists. People assumed that our role actually those days was basically being a mom and going to work to support your children and your family. And so we had the business thing and we had the sisterhood, because we were all being discriminated against. That kind of brought us more so together. And one of the problems was the difference is that we were mothers, and back then momhood and raising of children was all on the women. Occasionally there would be men who would contribute, but the way that the society was set up at that time, it was basically on the women. And so as an artist, those of you who are artists and who have artist friends, You understand, the thing about artists is that we need a great deal of alone time. Time to pursue your craft, time to actually do it, time to think about it. And as a parent, that gets a little hard.
It is hard.
So it is hard. It still is hard to this day.
It's hard, but did you notice, because you had been a member of Weusi, a difference in the way that Weusi functioned in supporting one another and the way that Where We At Black women artists supported each other? Were there any differences? Because women often are very comfortable dealing with 5 or 6 different roles at one time.
Yeah, but all of us, we had the same goal. It's just that we were different sexes and we had different problems. We all had the same problem, but as women, we had even more problems. And that was why Where We At came together, because we found all of these women artists who were doing incredible art, who were kind of lost and lonely. We had nobody to talk to, nobody to feed off of. We were all having issues being accepted as artists. It was because myself in particular, the only way that I got into Acts of Art Gallery was because the first time I went there, he said, "Oh no, you're not. You know, you're
Do you know who it was?
Nigel Jackson."
Okay.
Yeah, he assumed that I was going to be an artist for a couple of years, go off and get married, and ride off into the sunset or whatever. But Ellsworth Orsby went to Nigel and told Nigel that I was a serious artist and I should be given a shot. And from then, I had a show at Nigel's, and once Where We At was founded, we were one of the first things we were looking for was a place to exhibit as a group. And I said, well, Nigel, let me in, maybe he'll let us in. And we went to him, talked to him, and the rest is history. We had our first all black women show there.
We speak about Acts of Art Gallery. Just that's a historical note, which needs to be emphasized, because Acts of Art was in the village.
On that side.
On the west side. But the point is, it was a downtown location. On that note, I have to make a point here concerning Acts of Art. We have Professor Singerman here, who's a professor at Hunter College, that did a great service to American art, period, by organizing an exhibition dedicated to Acts of Art. And its important role especially in that period, but in terms of historical content and importance, Acts of Art was a very, very important institution, as exemplified in some of the research that Dr. Stingerman and subsequently the exhibitions that was mounted at Howard, and we have some wonderful publications. So Acts of Art, to my surprise, I didn't realize how many Where We At women and even my colleagues Weusi showed at Acts of Art.
Yeah, and there was, at the time, until maybe 20 years ago, there was a sort of a cultural hierarchy in terms of neighborhoods and boroughs. And even if you said people would view differently if you said you had a show in Harlem than if you said you had a show in Brooklyn, or if you said you had a show down in the Village. So for the larger mentality of people who follow culture, it meant something more prestigious, or it meant something more universal if your work was in a West Village area. And even the name Acts of Art sort of leads you to understand that this is a proactive, progressive platform. How many members were there when Where We At was the largest? How many members were there?
I have no idea, but I would say between 30 and 50, because we had members who stayed for the 25 years, and then we had people who would come in for a year, some for a couple of months, and they would move on. Entitled came after us.
That's right.
So,
I was a member
yeah.
of Entitled. Now, why would somebody move on? Why would they no longer be a member of Where We At?
A couple of reasons. at one point in time, there was this argument between abstract artists, black abstract artists, and black figurative artists. So there were some artists like Vivian Brown, for example, who was an abstract artist, basically.
Who has a show up at the Phillips Collection now,
Which is
beautiful show for
amazing.
beautiful show for work.
And yeah, and it was, that was part of it. And then some women would come because they needed the support, and when they got the support, they moved on. And I think in any kind of relationship, sometimes you just move on, because whatever your need was, either you fulfilled it or you've got an answer, or you just move on. Some people actually physically move from New York to different parts of the country.
But why would there be an argument between artists who are doing non-figurative work and artists who are doing figurative work? What would be the conflict, or
The
what would be the
conflict
tension?
was, at the time, we were doing figurative artwork because that resonated with the majority of the people we were looking for as patrons. Abstract art is another vehicle. Everybody doesn't understand abstract art. Everybody doesn't appreciate abstract art. But if you see a picture, you can, like the picture on the wall, like that print, you see what's going on. It's really, really clear. With abstract art, in my mind, you have to think, you have to feel. And because we were revolutionary, it was a black arts movement, we were trying to perpetuate the fact that black is beautiful. And how do you do that? By showing people figuratively, black is beautiful.
Or sometimes I wonder if, in general, people's inability to connect with abstract art is because they're not trained or taught to trust their inner instincts. They think that they have to have some intermediary explaining things to them, because in this country, the arts and looking at art and discussing art is not really part of formal education from early on.
Very true.
So the country is not art literate in general. It's a very ignorant country when it comes to all of the arts. So I think you're just talking about addressing the reality of people at the time.
The irony of all of this, Robin, is that abstract art was inherent in traditional African art. If you look at traditional African art, if you study the breadth of it, there's nothing more abstract than what they were doing going back really thousands of years.
That's right.
All right, and even more illustrative of that is South African, the painting of the residences, the Zulu, okay? You don't get more abstract than that. So Mondrian and a lot of those early European artists studied what these artists were doing and then adapted it into their own particular style and output, which is the nature of our period. I mean, it's about borrowing and reinterpreting and all of that. So a lot of the European artists, Picasso among them, and Mondrian, Modigliani, and so on, studied African art. They had it in their studios, Again, that's a whole other political story of how it got there. But, so that was, the whole idea of abstract art, to me personally, is something that I've always embraced. We love color. Cause you know how black people dress.
Yes.
So color is something, and looking at things from a perspective other than realism is not foreign to us. It's very much a part of our culture. But as Dindga just mentioned, the way the culture, and Robin described it, Americans' culture is, what is the word you use, ignorant?
And not art literate.
Not art literate, right. So that's a poignant
and it's a
point.
very important point
Yes,
that
it
you
is.
made that, and the fact that we're so stripped of our own history that we didn't even realize that abstracted art
part of our
comes
culture.
from the continent.
Yeah.
Dindga, were there any mentorships formed within the Where We At artists?
Yeah, I don't know if it's more formal, but just the fact that we were together as a group, we worked together. A lot of times we kept each other's kids, so we were more of like a family. And in that family, we talked about art. So there was always cross-pollination. There were art forms that we shared. We did a lot of fiber art back then, which was not popular at all. But because Priscilla did it and I did it, other women said, well, we're going to do it too. And we did. We did installations.
I would like you to expand a little bit on why fiber art was not viewed in the same way as a painting or a sculpture, because I think that that's part of the really destructive legacy of the White Boys Club, basically. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, because it wasn't just black women, it was all women. Fiber art was looked at as women's art, which in America meant that we were like down here, where fine art was up here. As an artist who does all of those mediums, I can tell you that the fiber artist, in my mind, works a lot harder. But they didn't, in fact, all this has been going on up until maybe 15 years ago. The same prejudice. As an artist who did fibers, who did quilts, you were not welcome in galleries. They didn't want to see you because they felt that this wasn't real art, this was a craft. And once again, that was segregating a whole population and saying that what we did was craft, yet what you were doing is art. And you know, it didn't make any sense, but that's how America was. And it took all of this time. In Houston, around Halloween, they have the biggest craft festival in the world. I have gone there a couple of times. I couldn't believe there were thousands of quilts from all over the world. People appreciated the act of fiber art there. But the rest of society, not so much.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's this ongoing thing in art, period, but I think it was especially in American art, that fiber art was a craft rather than
an art form.
One of the first persons, I think, in the public art domain, Judy Chicago, with the dinner party it's currently out. It's in permanent exhibition. Began to break that division down, because it was, like you said, it was a real problem of perception.
Yeah, fiber art, and also anything with clay.
Yeah.
Right.
Was also, and
ceramics,
even
yes.
to some extent, printmaking was also
too.
considered. When in fact, people who do what was considered craft art are often much more knowledgeable about physics and chemistry and the properties of the materials that they use, because they have to be. And they have a brilliant respect for natural interactions, because you have to use materials and equipment that you cannot control everything. So there's a real understanding and appreciation for nature's properties as well.
Yes.
A level of humility that goes on with the creative exploration.
And you left out photography.
That's
Photography
right.
was the stepchild
that's
too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Photography, that's right. Let me ask you, Dindga, how did you deal with or navigate variations in levels of skill or levels of real artistic, authentic, original vision amongst the artists? Were there any difficulties in terms of dealing with the group as opposed to the individual visions?
I think if there were any difficulties, it was that human thing called personalities. And people, because most of the women who came into where we at came in already established in their own field of artwork, but it was the personality conflict that would cause problems. And that also may be a reason why we had a turnover, not a big turnover, but women would come. Sometimes there'd be ideological
It wasn't just unique to the way we had, believe me.
I know. This is with any group. The same thing. You have, have a group of very creative human beings, all who have their own opinions, all who believe that their way is right, and so you're going to have problems because you have to learn the art of compromise, which for human beings is not really that easy. So
Or for people who are highly creative and highly individualistic, it's probably harder because we're wedded to our own specific singular vision. We're obsessive.
yeah, there you go.
And we're not like people in the theater or dance or musicians who are used to interacting with others in order to actually create.
Something.
So
Very true.
I remember the time there was a project where I don't know who spearheaded it, but there was going to be collaborative projects done with Where We At artists, and then they were going to get a male artist to
That
work
was
with them.
Charles
partnership.
Abramson.
Yeah, could you talk about, because I decided I didn't have the ego to do that, so I wasn't able to participate. But
It was a lot of fun. I don't remember how Charles came up with the idea, but the idea was to create, to pair one woman with one man, most of us Where We At, some Weusi, the other men were from artists from Brooklyn, and together we would create a third entity, a new piece of work. And it became an installation, and it was kind of interesting. Sharon Britton, remember, she was the Merry Widow because her man did not show up. But the rest of us, we did kind of interesting collaborative art pieces. So,
yeah,
but he was Charles unfortunately left us too early.
Yeah.
He just had this amazing vision.
yeah,
So
yeah. Was there a process to become a member of Where We At? Was there any kind of formal vetting process?
yeah, when we first began, we took everybody in. After that, you had to present your portfolio. You had to come before the group and make a speech and tell everybody why you wanted to be in the group. And then it was probably Kay and a couple of other women. We would sit down and talk about the new person to be admitted, and we worked like that. So there was a vetting process. But at the beginning, anybody who said they wanted to join Where We At, we embraced them.
Yeah. We could, our biggest problem is that we don't have 6 or 7 hours to explore all we can explore. So I think what I'm going to do is,
To the next generation.
Stephanie Santana and Dionis Ortiz have been so patient and quiet here. So I want to get over.
Enjoying listening.
Of course, you know that the three of us have worked with Betty and the Children's Art Carnival, so we have a real celebration of you, like kind of a very heartfelt feeling about you. Could you tell us how the Children's Art Carnival has shifted from before being a organization that basically did arts and education work for youngsters in the neighborhood, in the Harlem community, to what it is now? Could you explain how the carnival is functioning now?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me a part of this, and happy to see all of you here. The carnival today operates as an intergenerational gallery and arts organization that really takes in people from all ages and really tries to give them an experience, an art making experience that's unlike anything else. We bring in a lot of local artists from the community, but we also look at other artists that are connected through pretty much the Children's Art Carnival's legacy. You know, some of the Weusi artists we've had come back and to teach printmaking workshops there.
You just had a beautiful show of the way you see artists.
We did.
Yeah.
This past year, we
Yeah.
did. We had a wonderful Weusi, art show that was, really phenomenal. Great programming behind it, artist talks. So it's always about making sure that we're giving the community a piece of the history of the carnival, but at the same time introducing innovative new things that really can enrich, young people's lives.
Now,
But also
Dionis, when you say the
adults.
community, who are you talking about?
We're talking about people who are longtime community members, but we're also talking about, the people who are gentrifying this community as well.
Okay, so you mean neighborhood, when you say neighborhood, you mean like a community, you mean neighborhood?
Neighborhood,
Okay.
like pretty much within a 2-3 block radius, we're servicing the people that live there, But we're also bringing in people from other boroughs. At times we get people coming from Brooklyn, we get people coming from New Jersey, Washington Heights, the Bronx. So it varies, and but it's very wide and broad, and it's actually grown over the years, which is really fun and amazing to really see, because it's like seeing this plant kind of come back to life, that hasn't been nurtured for some time,
And you've had partnerships with other organizations as well, haven't you?
We have partnerships with Centro Cívico Cultural Dominicano. We have partnerships with Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop. So pretty much in the community, but then also just outside the community. But I guess focusing on the people that have had a great history and connection to Betty Blayton Taylor, and beyond. Really try to get as comprehensive and broad as possible, so that people can really see, again, the history, the legacy that we're trying to maintain and uphold, but at the same time, kind of take the baton to the next place, to the next step.
So is it primarily that the Children's Art Carnival is sponsoring workshops and exhibitions, or are there other activities or creative things going on in the space?
Well, one thing's for sure, we've developed Press and Pull Printmaking Workshop at the Children's Art Carnival. It's an initiative to develop a printmaking workshop, in the facility. So that's been going on for the past 2 years. So that's really been the big one. But we also have been doing a lot of community-based projects where we're giving artists in the community an opportunity to do public art projects that are collaborative, that really take in, the artists that live in the community and give them an opportunity to show something to the public.
Now, when you say public art, describe what you're talking about.
We've given grants to artists to develop projects where they can display their work outside. And also, it's interactive. It requires their participation to really activate the work, but it's also opportunities to bring people, I guess, in some ways, because we just had this exhibition, well, more like what we call a symposium called Rassemblage, and we did that this past summer, where we've had different artists create these kind of like public pieces, but at the same time interactive. So it requires for them to be placed outside in the neighborhood for people to experience, but also as a way to also lead people into the carnival. Because the carnival is in a way kind of like this best kept secret, right? Where it's tucked away on Hamilton Terrace. So if you don't really know Harlem like that, you're not gonna really know much about Hamilton Terrace. But once you see it, it's this gem that you've never known really existed. And so it helps really drive the audience in to the organization as well. But we're also trying to make our efforts to take ourselves out of the organization so that people can see what it is that we do.
By working with you in the streets or in the parks?
In the parks, because we collaborate, that symposium that I've just mentioned was something that we collaborated with Centro Cívico Cultural Dominicano. And so we would have our artists and performance artists actually outside of their organization. So it's a way to, because like Ademola said, it's hard to get people from our neighborhood to want to come and experience art. So sometimes you got to bring it to them to pull them in, so we have to have like that flexibility. I don't know if it's so much compromise, but more like flexibility to understand that it takes, it just takes, I guess, getting more involved, and thinking beyond what you normally were thinking to get the audience to want to come and experience these things.
Are there any artists actually doing their work on site at the carnival?
Yes, we have artists, studios that are housed at the Children's Art Carnival, and organizations. So myself, I have a studio there. We have artists like Tomo Mori, she is a fiber artist. We have Milagros Batista, she's another, and Martha May Jones, who are fiber artists, who work in crochet, who work using fabric on two-dimensional works. But we also have Hamilton Heights Darkroom, which is like right now an organization based in photography, black and white photography, whether you can develop and print your own film. Dark rooms at this point are like non-existent, so to have one in Harlem is like they're the only ones in Manhattan at this point.
And so are they doing conventional photographic work for artists, or are they giving workshops to youngsters or interested people?
They're actually doing a little bit of each. They are providing space for professional artists who need space to work, artists who are interested in photography but don't know photography. They will teach them. They have taught to homeless shelters, like children that are living in homeless shelters. They've given them opportunities to, do photography, to take, use 35 millimeter cameras and develop and print their own film and pictures and all.
So Dionis, who makes the decisions about the programming right now at the Children's Art Carnival?
Right now, it's through a small team of the artists that are, having studios in-house at the Carnival. Michael Lunthank is our chair, and he is like our lead, but we work with him and we work collaboratively together to, put together the programming, put together the teachers who will be involved. I usually take care of managing the gallery exhibitions schedule, and really, but it's also still something that the team kind of really decides on who gets exhibited, and what kind of programming we can create around it.
Can another organization or group of artists come to the Carnival and request an exhibition there?
It's possible. We've we've actually worked with an artist that's actually connected to Blackburn Printmaking Workshop, Yasuyo, who is an artist who created this show called Seed Bomb, which is a group show that was based around the bombing of Hiroshima. So that happened this past August. So yeah, we always welcome artists to present proposals for exhibitions, and we try to find a place in there throughout the year so that we can make space for them. Because we know that space is a very valuable thing and a very challenging thing to acquire. So it's only right for the Carnival to, as a place that's trying to uphold Betty Blayton's Taylor's legacy. It's not just about supporting artists, but also supporting other art organizations whenever possible.
Mm-hmm. So could you just talk about what you understand of Betty's legacy? How do you see it addressing the needs and situations today?
I think that the way we can uphold her legacy is by, in a way, not doing it the same after school programming kind of approach, but just having access to these kinds of workshops, giving young people, not just small 12-year-old children, but also our 15-year-olds, our young 18-year-olds as well, giving them opportunities to have access to meeting visual artists. We've had open studio events where, the public can come in, see what the artist is working on in their studio, have that dialogue about what they're creating in their work, why they're doing that, what are their intentions behind it, how does it relate to the broader community, and in a way, the art world that they're developing for themselves versus the art world that, we're not necessarily welcomed into.
Do you have any programming that addresses talking about how to write an artist statement, or how to contact a museum, or how to cultivate interest amongst curators, or how to build a collector base, or how to get in touch with art historians, or how to build art careers?
Right. I would say that we've done some, but we always got more to always do. But I will say that we've had these, what we call writing clinics, where artists can call in and have a meeting on Zoom to talk about maybe an artist statement or maybe even a grant proposal that they're trying to develop. We've had, what else has there been? There's been one on artist statements specifically. And some of the programming that we're looking towards in the future is for art law, understanding copyrights, understanding how the copyright laws changes, understanding what are your rights as an artist, when you're, or what is the criteria for a good artist agreement, so that they can learn how to protect themselves, things to be watchful for. Another workshop is working with, curators to understand what is galleries looking for? Like, how do you approach a gallery? How do you assert yourself and position yourself in your practice so that you don't feel like you're compromising what you do in order to get an exhibition, but really more looking at it as a standpoint that, what you do is there's power in that. There's power in the things that you create. And as long as you believe and have faith in that, you can really cultivate and sculpt something for yourself that another person would be interested in, like promoting, advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had the mentorship program also a couple
We
of
do.
years ago.
Yeah. It's
Could
very
you
broad.
talk a little bit about that?
We work with our artists. It kind of just happens based on the relationship that we develop with our artists in-house, right? Some artists just have their craft is, very significant, in terms of being able to talk about it, but it's, at the same time, the development of the work, how they can show us how things that they made from like certain, like 3, 4, 5 years ago and how it looks today and how that's grown. We talk with them, we have meetings with them. I remember I've had extensive conversations with Milagros Batista because she wanted to better understand how to approach answering questions about the making of her work. Because a lot of times, as artists, you're working individual. It's a solo job, right? So to then take that into an audience and to kind of in a way explain or really unpack, we'll say, where it stems from and how it becomes from a thought to a physical thing. It takes conversations, it takes talks, it takes time to talk over the phone, meet in person. It's almost like you're giving them their own private, talk about, why they do what they do, but it's symbiotic. You gotta work, with the person, and you gotta try to really spend some time with the artist to really help understand how you develop that, how you can cultivate that and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your biggest challenges right now to growing or realizing a broader level of service?
I would say, budgeting. It's always a big one, right? It's always an issue. But we work with what we have. I think outside of that, I think it's the retention of making sure that people attend these workshops. That's a challenge. But at the same time, it's a challenge that I think the rest of the city experiences, right? Because we're in New York. It's a competitive place. We can have, 20 people sign up for a workshop, and when the day comes, we might just get half or we might get 0, right? But how do you not get jaded? How do you not get discouraged, right? You got to try to find, the good, the positive things that you can take from that and try to move on to the next thing so that we're not stuck and feeling this thing's just not working out. What are we not doing? It's no, what we have and what we do is great. It's just that there are days when it's not what we expect it to be, but it's what it's meant to be, right? Mm-hmm. And understanding that we can use that as a tool to move forward, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of assessing, and I think success comes in different ways. Success doesn't just come from just having a full classroom. Success can come from, maybe there was one person that came through, but that worst one person that came, you were able to, have a great introduction to what the Carnival is and what the Carnival is about, right? I think I had times when one of our teaching artists called in sick, wasn't able to make it for a workshop. We had maybe about 4 or 5 people that were ready to, participate. And since I'm there and I was, I'm around, it's okay, well, let's have a workshop of our own kind of thing. I think it's about thinking in the moment, being present, responding to the needs that are being asked for. Yeah. And so, and it turned out to be a great experience for this person, right? And I think if you can provide great experiences, it just generates more of that, right? I was able to have a great workshop. We had an art making workshop.
Now, when you
and
say
then-
great, what does that mean?
means that
What
they
is
enjoyed their
success? What is-
successes. They learned something new. They enjoyed what they learned. They expressed how they didn't. They never tried collage in the way that we presented it. They appreciated having an exhibition around them based around, at the time, it was Wilhelmina Grant Cooper, who's an assemblage artist, right? And her work is about cancer awareness. Her work is about empowerment, right? And the students were able to meet the artist in that moment, right? And so it's that access, right, that we're able to provide, that immediate access, versus what they see on TV and that person that sings that wonderful, beautiful song that you love, but you never met them. You didn't get to have a conversation with that person. You didn't get to ask the questions that you probably wanted to ask about, why did she write that song? Why did she, and it's like at the Carnival, you can meet the artist, you can talk to them, you can ask them these questions on why they do what they do. And it's providing an opportunity for that child to feel like, I could become that. I could be this artist, living that life, I may not be doing the same thing, but I feel like, wow, it's really great to see that I'm witnessing something and touching this person and able to hear this person speak to me about her work and why she does it. And it's beyond the finances. It's about feeling like she has her purpose, And I think that is more valuable than money, because I think that we can all say that we've experienced people in our lives that don't understand their purpose and how lost you can feel when you don't have that in your life, right? So I think that that's what the Carnival can do is provide that access.
Does the Carnival have any plans to develop a library of art books?
There's many
or
plans.
Catalogs,
There's
or
always
brochures?
plans. Brochures, definitely. Books, yes. We're trying to we got one book we're trying to work on right now that Betty actually created. It's called Making Thoughts Become, that we want to, in a way, have the Carnival and Blackburn, hopefully, republish this book, but also have, in a way, a library that they can, have access to, that they can see books that they don't commonly see in like libraries or bookstores. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of a guest artist program?
Guest artists, for come in to do
to do a special project, or to be there for a period of time to develop a new work, or somebody coming from out of town, or somebody coming from a different culture?
Not as of yet, but that is something that I thought about for the print shop when that develops, some kind of of a short residency, where they can develop a body of work and be able to, provide maybe some dialogue and some content, where people can engage with it, one-on-one.
Because, the Carnival, of these 4 collectives, the Carnival is the only one that has a brick and mortar space, so that's this precious resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a beautiful space.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building. It's just it's historic. Right?
It is.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. No, but we're definitely looking to do, things of that nature to really kind of, expand on a literary level to be able to have access to because archiving is important, and we have archives, we have films, we have photographs, we have a lot of things that people would love to see, maybe not through glass cases, but maybe through books.
Yeah. Thank you, Dionis.
Welcome, thank you.
So now we get to hear from Stephanie Santana. Are you one of the founders of Black Women in Print?
So I make a distinction of being a founding member, because Black Women in Print was founded in 2018 by Shameekia W. Harris, who is based in Milwaukee. And so what she did is that she kind of knew myself through a project we'd worked on several years before, and some of the other artists that she kind of connected with. She reached out to all of us and kind of said, I'm interested in starting this collective of Black women printmakers. Are you interested in joining? And so, a group of us said yes, because she founded it because she was really interested in having that camaraderie and that sisterhood and that place for us to all kind of connect. And so I'm one of the original.
Are the members in different areas of the country?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are two of us in New York, myself and Karen Revis, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. Tanika is in Milwaukee. Other members are Althea Murphy Price, who's in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Latoya Hobbs, who's in Baltimore. And then we have Dr. Deborah Grayson, who's in Silver Spring, Maryland. Yeah.
So
we're
what is the mission of Black Women in Print?
So it's kind of evolved over the past 7 years, where we kind of called ourselves a professional member organization originally, and now we really consider ourselves like a tight-knit collective. And the mission is really for us to just have that support. I really feel that we are part of the lineage of the Black arts movement. Our work is dealing with similar concerns, whether that's social, political, spiritual. A lot of what Dindga was saying really resonated with me in terms of, where we at, Artist Collective, and how we really just need that moral support. A lot of us are in a caregiving role. I think actually we're all in caregiving roles. So
You're all
in caregiving roles. So either we're moms, we're taking care of a parent, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of, it's challenging, and we have ways that we kind of work through that together. We each have our individual art practices, but our mission is really to support each other.
So how do you support each other, being that you're in different areas of the country?
Yeah, it's interesting how social media and the internet have kind of come into play with that, especially post-COVID, where we have Zoom and everything that, but we'll text each other. We speak to each other through Discord as well, which for those who don't know, it's an app where you can kind of chat with folks, and we have all these different categories that are, sharing articles, sharing things about, things that we may have read, and kind of saying like, well, what do you think about this? And then we'll have a conversation about it. We have monthly meetings as well over Zoom. And so it's really, building that communication network as a group, but also having like those individual relationships.
So the articles that you read and share, are they articles about printmaking techniques, or are they articles about Black women artists, or what kinds of art? What kinds of
things that are happening in the art market, things that are, a technique that we may be interested in learning more about. One of us may have more expertise than the other person, because we all have different approaches to printmaking. So I'm primarily a textile artist and work with screen printing. Latoya works in woodcut, is very masterful at that. We have all different disciplines of printmaking that we work across. So we do a lot of knowledge sharing. And I should mention too, we do exhibit together pretty frequently. We try to do at least one exhibition per year. We would love to do a 10th anniversary museum show. That's a big goal that we have coming up. We've exhibited at IFPDA Print Fair twice, which is the International Fine Art Print Dealers Association fair. And we're really supportive in the way that we, when it's time to work, it's time to work. When it's time for us to come together and do a show, it's like everybody's on point and on the same page. But we also are very mindful of capacity and just saying, okay, how do we feel about a certain opportunity that may come up, or, a group exhibition? If not everybody is able to do it, we're very supportive of that, because we know that we all have very full lives. So,
have you ever had any potential opportunities that you declined because you didn't think that they would work for the group?
Oh yeah.
Like what?
I'm trying to decide how much to share. I won't name any specific, but there are times when we felt that folks have come to us and not really wanted to respect the amount of effort and work and labor that goes into what they're asking. And so in a lot of those situations, we're kind of like, we need to set boundaries.
So are you talking about organizations or platforms that come and request a group show from Black women in print,
Yeah.
but don't provide the resources necessary to make it happen?
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Especially because,
Okay.
a lot of us are kids, or not a lot, because it's 6 members, but, we have bills to pay just like everybody else. And so it depends. If we're doing something where it feels it's something that really has a significance to us, where we feel like, okay, we're willing to do this. It's not always about money necessarily, but we have to kind of walk a line there, I think. And there's also been things, especially during, there was a lot of additional attention and visibility, I think, particularly in 2020, which I'm sure a lot of you remember. And we would get requests like, hey, can you do, an Instagram takeover, which is where somebody will make a post on another person's page or another organization's page. So we got a lot of, we get requests around like Black History Month, like 2 days before, and they're like, can you post these things? And so things like that, it's just, we really try to really value each other's time and capacity.
So
Yeah.
when you do mount an exhibition, what constitutes a successful exhibition? What does that
Successful,
mean? What
yeah.
happens? What comes of the exhibition? What does it generate?
I think that does kind of vary from person to person, but I really feel good when we all bring our best work and we're able to, I think it makes a strong statement when we're all showing work together in one space, because there are a lot of points of connection between the different themes that we're working on. We don't ever sit and discuss, this is what we're going to make the work about, but somehow it's all in conversation with each other. And that feels successful to me.
I'm asking this question because through the years that I've been functioning as an artist, I know that some exhibitions, the goal is to get a lot of press reviews. Sometimes the goal is to connect with, if it's often in a university or a college, the goal is to connect with the school community and have series of conversations or dialogues, or have the students look at the work, write about the work, interpret the work. Sometimes the goal of an exhibition is to identify new collectors. So that's why I'm asking. Because I'm not that familiar with Black women in print.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking for you, when you put a show together, what are the goals, or what defines a successful event for you?
Right. I think it does depend on the venue as well. So we did do a show at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I think it was last year. It was called Lore, and it was based on a portfolio that we did together that was talking about just our personal narratives, interiority, and so there were a few of us were able to travel down there and have conversations with the community there, and there were a couple of panel discussions that were led. We also, when we show at IFPDA, I think a successful exhibition there, because it's a print fair, is if we do make some sales, or we make new connections. We've had like students come in and see the work, which has been really amazing. So I love, having those conversations with folks, and just them being able to see like there are still, lots of Black folks making art,
Before you mentioned something about professional, that the women are professional printmakers. So I wanted to ask you, because there's always been a difference in the interpretation of the word professional. I know the IRS does not have the same interpretation that I have. So, and I know that there are certain art publications that don't have the same interpretation that I have. So what do you mean when you say professional printmakers or professional artists?
Well, that language originally came from Shameekia and how she was thinking about sort of distinguishing the level of expertise in the printmaking, but I think what we came to is we wanted to change the language around that a little bit because we didn't want to make such a hard definition of, because there's all these levels of master printmaker, and we even talked about instead of calling it master, we wanted to kind of decolonize that language and say established printmaker. So we do call ourselves mid-career established, but we are a collective in the way that we function.
Mm-hmm. So who makes the decisions?
We make
How many members are there now?
6.
There's 6.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
6, and we've had that cohort for, I think, 3 years now.
And what does somebody do if they want to be considered as becoming a member of Black Women in Print, or are you not taking in more members?
We're not actually taking any more members at this particular time. There was a point where we had an application process, but what we found is that the kinds of things that we want to be able to do, it's important to have consensus. And so it's easier to have that when you have a smaller group of people that have similar goals. So some people, we were talking about turnover a little bit. That did happen because there were folks that had different goals and different ways that they wanted to, or that they thought the collective or the organization should be structured. There was talk at one point of it being a nonprofit organization. And so we've done a lot of trial and error with that. And we found that this is really what allows us to accomplish the most and feel like we have really close-knit support. So what else do you want us to know about Black Women in Print that we don't know? Have all of the members met each other in person? Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'll bring up another really amazing experience that we had is that we did a residency together at Penland School of Craft in Penland, North Carolina in 2022. And that was just really beautiful. And I'd love to do that more because, as I said, we're kind of all over the country. And we had a week together where we just were in the print studio. And so that was like real-time knowledge sharing. There was something I was trying to figure out with like cutting a stencil. And Deborah was like, hey, you could do it this way. You could use this material. And because we have different approaches to printmaking, it was really generative. And, those are the kinds of things that I think make it really special.
So where do you do your work? Do you have, you do screen printing, you said?
Yeah.
Is it
in monotype?
Is it photographic screen printing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I primarily work because I like to use the yardage table, which is where you can roll out, a length of fabric and print on it. I work at Textile Arts Center in Brooklyn in the Gowanus neighborhood. And then I also work at Blackburn. And then at the kitchen table at home. I did have a studio space last year through the Brick Lab Contemporary Art Residency. But, it's like we were talking about space is really, it's challenging. So, I kind of I think working in the medium that I work in really allows me to be mobile, and because I could take little pieces of fabric here and there, and it's very conducive to, my life as a mom as well. So
So do you or Dionis have any questions for these two? I'm sorry to use the word master, but these master collective designers. I mean, they have so much history between them and so much knowledge and experience. Do you have any questions in terms of how to generate interesting collectives, or how to get your tentacles out there and how to spread the word? Do you have any questions you want to ask Dindga or Ademola?
Well, I think I would say my question would be any advice based on everything. Like, what would be something that you would like to impart on to me for the carnival, in a way to for it to continue on the path that it's been?
I think you should keep doing what you're doing and just keep adding stuff, because you're honoring Betty's legacy. Yeah, just the fact that you're still there is honoring a legacy, and what you are doing, considering the times that we live in, is amazing. You are one of the few organizations where you actually own your space. That is so, so important. And just keep going forward and branching out when you can.
Very important things to know about Bob and Betty. First place, they were very, very close as friends. They were very close as artists. Many people probably don't realize that Betty, the Studio Museum is about to open in their new magnificent structure in a few weeks.
I'm going.
November the 15th. Betty Blayton was part of the original team that conceived and helped bring the Studio Museum into being. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that. And it was a project that began from the Museum of Modern Art, in which she had a very close relationship. Also, what tends to get lost is that Betty was a brilliant artist. People know her as an administrator, the founder of the Children's Art Carnival, which is huge. Also, she is really a very fine, beautiful artist. And so those are things that I don't want to get lost in all of this, you know, as we talk about administrative stuff. I'm in total harmony with Dindga's perspective, and that is, you keep on doing what you're doing. You guys are doing a great job. I've known you for a long time as a youngster growing up. We have the gentleman in the house who's been instrumental in helping to revive the carnival, both in terms of its presence and even the building itself being renovated. Michael, are you in the house? I thought I saw Michael. Okay, Michael Unthank. So that's the only thing I would say. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that it needs to be said that what is so precious to us in that you're continuing the activity at the carnival is that Betty was committed to teaching children not just to give them opportunities to have a creative experience, but she understood very clearly that through the creative process, you learn the characteristics of equipment and tools and consumable materials. You try to find ways to translate your thoughts and questions and feelings onto a physical surface. You think critically, you track what you intend to do and how close or far that is from the final result. You consider options, you make decisions. So actually, she was giving youngsters an opportunity to learn basic life skills. There is no other avenue in any part of civilization that offers as much as art making. And art making is naturally connected to every element of society: history, philosophy, spirituality, chemistry, mathematics. Any kind of human endeavor somehow is connected to some form of the arts. So that was what Betty's goal was, as well as trying to create avenues for artists of color, primarily African American artists, to find their way in the larger world. And then, of course, you are continuing the tradition of printmaking, which in many countries and many places here also often has a sort of a political, what we call a political voice, or it has a voice of the people, it has a voice of trying to disseminate the needs and the desires and the conditions of the human population. So that's very much a part of something probably that we need very much today. So I thank all of you brilliant, wonderful people. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, before I just have to, we all have to really thank Corinne Jennings, because we're sitting in, I mean, when Ademola was talking about Bob and Betty, Corrine is there. I mean, Corrine has been able to keep this very sacred place functioning since, was it 1971, or am I wrong? 1974, which is really a miracle when you think about it. And she has seen the neighborhood shift and change so many times, and she has literally held steadfast in the midst of a lot of badly intended energy. So we love you and we salute you and we are grateful to you. So does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? Any of us up here? Yes.
I just wanted to, I'm a historian, so I can't help it, but in 1983, Dindga and Ademola and Betty Blayton were all at Hatch Phillips' loft, and they were talking together on a panel called When That Time Came Rolling Down, and they were talking about Weusi and where we at, and the Children's Art Carnival, and the histories that those groups helped form in the 1970s. And by 1983, when the panel took place, it seemed as though that moment had passed. And so it's so nice to see it here and alive.
Yeah, thank you for that, because he's referring to the Hatch Phillips collection, which is still actually in existence at 491 Broadway. And Camille Billups and Jim Hatch were committed, I think, for 30 years, was it 30 years, of collecting narratives, interviewing artists, and filming. She really wanted artists to talk. It was primarily visual artists, but there were some writers, there were some dancers, maybe a few musicians, who she wanted people to understand the actual creative process and not necessarily focus on a listing of the resume or the CV or all of the accomplishments, but to really talk about what it takes each artist to actually create the work. How do they translate whatever they're translating? How do they exist in the world? The choices that artists make as opposed to a regular, conventional, middle-class American person are often really not understood. A lot of us, how many artists are there here in this room right now? Yeah, so all of these people that raise their hands are people that are living in a very different way, because there's a continuous inner dialogue that leads you, that motivates you, that often you really, if you're in clean, clear, transparent shape, you're not controlling. There's something, there's an intuition, there's a knowingness, there's a need to express, to discover, to explore, that you can't do any other way. Basically, we're all kind of not really sane, is what I want to say. So are there any other questions? Anybody want to say anything, share anything? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was thinking earlier when you were talking about the need to get Black people to understand through art, the positive aspect of them and how they were copying, getting away from the negativity. And it was a story in Ibn Khaldun. He's the first historian to say, go into the sociological effects of domination in like 13th and 14th century, where he said that the conquered people adopt the copy certain aspects of the person who conquered them, And so that's what, when we're dealing with, issues of our hair and our culture and just, our sense of love and appreciation of ourselves, that's what that's coming from, is that we're actually, fighting off this being conquered and overwhelmed, and how we're going to create something differently. I just thought about that.
Yeah, that's such a true reality. It was interesting because the other day a friend of mine who's South African, she's often asking me to she wants me to explain like why African Americans in the United States do certain things or say certain things or have certain attitudes, because she as a a South African was explaining that during apartheid, unless you had a special invitation through a high-profile institution, Black South Africans were not allowed to travel anywhere except for 2 countries in the continent of Africa. So she was telling me that we didn't even know what was going on in Ghana, Nigeria, Guinea-Bissau, Morocco, Rwanda. We had no understanding. And I look at African Americans and I look at the agency that you all have, the sense of purpose that you have, the sense of integrity and dignity, and it just boggles my mind how much you've been able to develop and claim for your own. And I said to her, well, part of it I really do have to say is because we are partly American, and some of the positive characteristics that most people in different parts of the world identify as uniquely American is a sense of you have the right to do what you can envision, and you have the right to take risks. You have the right to create something, even if you don't know if it will actually work out. You have the right to ask a lot of questions. And so I think a lot of that is a combination of some of our DNA from the African diaspora, but also our DNA as peoples of this area of the world. So thank you, Amir, for that. That's a very important point.
We looked at our art as a sort of a weapon, a defense, a resistance in our very being. And Robin, I want to just take a moment to commend you. You are a brilliant moderator. Listen, I've been interviewed a lot in my life, and I'll tell you, this lady here is something else. And so thank you for being here.
All credit is due to my mommy, because my mom told me when I was like around 8, you better get up off your behind and go get the dictionary. And anytime you want to find out what something means, look it up in the dictionary, and then remember that Webster is a fascist, racist capitalist. So you have to read between the lines. So what you need to do, because you're an independent Negro girl, is to always ask how, when, why, where. And keep asking questions, because the universe will reveal itself to you if you ask the questions. The answers really aren't that important, because they'll come and go and they'll change, and they're different for everybody. So thank you so much, Ademola.
Thank you.
I send that message up to my mom.